The modern period started from 1901 and extended up to 1945, whereas the postmodern period is the period after 1945. But rather than dividing this age into modern and postmodern phases and calling it with the names modern and postmodern era, this period is better to be called as the 20th century literature. This period saw two major events happening. The World War I, which started from 1914 and lasted up to 1918, and the World War II, starting from 1939 and lasting up to 1944, which changed the overall social, political, and cultural landscape of the world. This time period saw the decline of imperialism and rising of USA as the superpower. Let us discuss the 20th century period in detail. The 20th century began with the end of the Victorian era. The things were not the same as they used to be until the Victorian age. The economy, the culture, and the overall social behavior of the country as well as the world was changing in the modern age. Now, the world was becoming more and more advanced in the fields of science and technology. Until the Victorian age, we have seen that the society was majorly dominated by religious discourse, and people had faith in God and believed that any kind of natural calamity or change that occurs is usually the act of God. There was no question raised and no explanations asked for any such natural event happening. But with the advancement of science and technology, and especially after the publication of Darwin's theory of evolution, people became skeptical of the religion and they started asking questions and demanded explanation for a particular kind of phenomena that happened. At the same time, the people also started wondering or thinking about themselves and their place in the world. Many of the countries which were once ruled by the British Empire or were under imperialism now suddenly gained independence. For example, America. The ideals and the value system and the traditions that were being followed until the Victorian age or all the previous ages so far were now being rejected as hypocritical, superficial, and mean. This period was also time for tragedy, violence, and death because the two biggest events of the century happened in this time. The First World War and the Second World War. These two world wars were also majorly responsible for shaking the faith of the English people from religion, and they started questioning the religious system or the religious value system. This led to increased frustrations all around. The two world wars increased this frustration because people saw their loved ones getting killed, their friends and family getting killed in the war, and the religion was of no help or use to them during this time. So naturally, it led to the faith being entirely shaken. So this period is also known as a period of political and religious skepticism. Skepticism means when you are in doubt and do not believe in the phenomena as given and asked questions and explanations to prove it. There was a general lack of faith, disillusionment, isolation, cynicism, and irony that had become the part of everyday life or the life of general public. This skepticism and all these things that were happening at that time, the disillusionment, the isolation, and cynicism, all these things were becoming a part of literature that was being produced at that time. A lot of different experimental writing techniques were being employed in literature during this time. Most of these techniques were brought to break the conventional rules of writing or storytelling which were being followed up till the Victorian age. For example, the typical third person narrative style of a novel was now being replaced by the stream of consciousness technique which we see in Virginia Woolf's novel Mrs. Dalloway. The symbols, the imagery, the use of irony, everything changed, and nothing which was being used since so many years was in use anymore now. The characters in these stories were usually seen as people adapting themselves to a changing world, because the actual or the real world in front of them was also changing after the two world wars. These characters were shown as dealing with difficult circumstances and facing many challenges, many kinds of traumas in their lives. The point here to note is that the period during the years 1920 in America were known as the Jazz Age. The American novelists who were writing during this time and their novels reflect the features of Jazz Age. Now, what is Jazz Age? Jazz Age, also known as the Roaring Twenties, since it was the time period between 1918 to 1929. This period was marked by significant cultural, social, and economic changes in America, which is reflected in the literature of this period. Some of the key features of this jazz age are jazz music. It was a genre in music which originated in African American communities. Then there was a dance form which became popular during the jazz period, that is the tango dance form. A particular kind of dance form called the tango dance form also became popular during this time. Then we have Harlem Renaissance, which was also a movement that came in African American art, literature, and music in the Harlem region of New York, which was also a part or a feature of the jazz age. The jazz age was the age of abundance, which means that there was increase in mass production of cars and other things of utility. The business was booming and the middle class or the poor class was benefiting from it by venturing into new business and earning money. This time period is a period when America was flourishing economically, and the gap between the poor and the rich in terms of money and social status was decreasing. The women's suffrage also came during this time, and the women gained greater independence in education, work, and also in personal life. A lot of urbanization was happening during this time as people were moving from rural areas to cities, leading to the growth of metropolitan centers. The stock market was also growing exponentially during this period, though the people were having money, but still there were certain sections of the society who were still poor in many areas. This period saw a huge gap between the rich and the poor. In literature, during the Jazz Age, we see some writers who fall under the category of the lost generation, which includes writers like Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, T.S. Eliot, Gertrude Stein, Ezra Pound, William Faulkner, Sherwood Anderson, etc., who reflected the disillusionment and social change in their writings. These writers experienced the trauma and disillusionment of the World War I, which led to the loss of faith in traditional values. Many writers during this time left the United States and moved to Europe, particularly Paris, after the World War I, as they were fed up with the disoriented society of the States. The term lost generation was coined by Ernest Hemingway during one of his conversations with Gertrude Stein. Many members of this group struggled with mental health issues, addictions, and personal turmoil, and all these were due to the after effects of World War I. So that was all about the modern and the postmodern world, its socio-political background, what was happening around England and the entire world during that time, and everything that we need to know about the history of this period. In the next video, we will talk about the poetry that became popular during the 20th century literature. So let's go to the next video.